All right, hello and welcome to this episode of Man to Dad. I want to thank all of my returning listeners and viewers for checking us out. And if you are new to the podcast, then welcome. I hope this is something that provokes some thought, maybe makes you ask some questions, reflect on where it is that you're going in this journey. So today, I'm taking a step in a different direction. Normally, we have guests where we're talking about their journey as dads. They're already dads and some step of the way. But today, I thought it would be great for us to talk to a future dad, an expectant dad, a dad who is really, really on the edge of going on this big adventure. So I want to thank him first for joining us. This is Roger, everybody. So thank you, Roger, for joining us and being vulnerable for all of the soul-wrenching questions that I'm going to go through with you. So let's just start off with some basic stuff. So how old are you now?
I am 35, actually.
Okay.
I had to think about my exact age there.
That's okay. We're not going to card you or anything. So 35, and are you married now?
I am not. I've actually been married in the past. When we're chatting ahead of time, this is one of the questions where I was like, I don't know how much to ramble on about, but somewhat relevant for this discussion. It was really at the point of being ready to have children, and at that stage in my life where with my former partner, my ex-wife, we realized we weren't ready to have kids with one another, and that was kind of what spelled the end of that relationship. And I was very fortunate and lucky to meet my current partner. Because of my previous marriage and just her thoughts, we have very complicated thoughts about marriage, but we kind of hit a point where we were fully committed to one another. We're thinking, well, what's more important to us? Having children, getting married, both are very expensive propositions, and we decided what's most important for us is to start a family together.
Okay, so a lot of things I want to kind of pick apart in there. I'm sure you saw that coming.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were married before?
I was quite young. Again, difficult to remember the exact age. We got married in 2014, so that would have made me, I guess, 25 or 26.
26. Yeah.
Got married before my birthday that year.
Okay. All right. And how long were you married then?
We were only married for 3 years.
Okay.
We were fantastic partners when it came to tackling projects together. Mm-hmm. And so she's French, and we met abroad in Finland, actually. And our first project was being able to live in the same country together. So figured out the immigration process. I'm from originally Toronto. We moved to Montreal together. Figured that out. Found we were both newly graduating from university, helped each other find jobs. Step after that was finding a place to live, planning our wedding, then buying our first house together. And the next step after that was starting a family, having children. And it was really that moment that gave us both pause and really surfaced all the things that actually made us unhappy, and realized how the relationship wasn't stable long term. And I'm fortunately still great friends with my ex-wife, and I'm very lucky for that. But we realized we were not the right people to be starting a family together.
So it wasn't a question of age, it was that we're not the right pairing to be parents.
I think when we committed to each other and got married together, we both felt we were more mature than we were, and it was really that question of starting a family that really threw that in our face and really made us question a lot of the fundamental aspects of a relationship.
Okay, it's a good thing that came up.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were mature enough to stop and pause there, and we didn't take that step together necessarily.
Right.
And fortunately, we've both found fantastic partners, and she actually had a daughter just a bit over a year ago.
Okay.
And something that was important to both of us was having children and having a family, and so I'm very happy that she was able to have that opportunity.
That's great. So this is something you always wanted to do?
It was something I always saw myself doing, having a family. I always hesitated and wondered if I'd ever be mature enough to have children and be responsible for the life of another human being, to be honest.
Right.
And I think, I know now it's not that uncommon to be having your first child at the age of 35, but generally speaking, 35 I think is a little bit older to be having your first child. It did take me until 35 to feel ready, and I wanted to make sure I did feel ready before starting a family. And though I knew I always wanted children, I was worried that feeling would never come, that I felt like I was prepared. This was the right decision for now. And something really clicked over the past year. I thought, now feels like the right time. It feels like I'm ready to take that step, and kind of difficult to point to what that is exactly, but that definitely did come into me over the past year.
Yeah, I don't know if generally as men we're used to saying, oh, this was the feeling, this is the time, this was it. It's a feelings, just generally things that we aren't very good at recognizing or being able to state or pinpoint. So I don't think it'd be fair to even ask you, what was that feeling? What was that thing? Just that sudden, like, okay, now. And, I became a dad at 36. So, people are having kids older and older now, I don't think it's anything to really be worried about. But, I often ask dads in the podcast, about their sense of when they feel like they were no longer boys, when they feel like, okay, this was the moment where I go, okay, I'm a man now. And about 90% of them jokingly say, oh, I'm still a kid, and there's that part of it where they go, well, I'm a man because chronologically I'm a man, but grown up. So yeah, I think we're both saying the same kind of thing.
Yeah, something my dad said a couple of times to me that I really, he didn't mean it to stick, but it's really stuck. He's 72 and he's retired, and he still jokes, one day I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And that resonates with me so much. Right.
So you bringing up your dad, I was planning on asking you about what your relationship with your dad is like.
I'm very fortunate to have two fantastic parents. I did read that question obviously ahead of time and wondered how I would quite respond to it. So growing up, I was lucky to have a stay-at-home mom, but the other side of that equation meant I had a dad who he had to work really hard to provide for our family. He was a software salesperson, and in sales, it's all about commission and meant working really long hours to provide for our family. And so growing up, he was very, very stressed quite often. He didn't have a lot of time to spend with me and my brothers, and because of having a stay-at-home mom and a dad who worked very hard, obviously I was a lot closer to my mom growing up than I was with my dad. And I think in my younger years and through my early teenage years, I wasn't very close and was a little bit, I think, resentful towards him, because you have the stressed dad and he's generally present when there's those serious situations that he has to step into, and it kind of puts him as the bad cop. And it wasn't really until I got older in my later teenage years and my early adulthood where I was really able to see how loving and caring my dad really is. And I grew a lot closer to him, unfortunately, when I moved away to university. And I've grown a lot closer to him in my adult life. And it's been a little bit painful now living 6 hours away from my parents here in Montreal. They're still in Toronto, but I'm really lucky to have a very loving dad. And ironically, the pandemic brought us closer together, because one thing my dad loves to do is work out and train. He was a marathon runner, which inspired my brothers and I to actually run, and he's a big biker. And because of the pandemic, he could no longer bike with his friends in person, so they started biking online through Zwift. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
sure,
Zwift.
sure. Okay.
And so now actually every morning my dad and I hop on Zwift together. We get on WhatsApp on a call and we get to ride together and chat together for an hour.
Oh, that's amazing.
Every morning, which is, it's a fantastic, really having an hour with your dad together while you're in your 30s, I think it's a rare and unique opportunity. And I'm so lucky to have that.
Yeah. Well, so until you figured out, or not figured out, but found that relationship in your later teens, just before you were leaving for university, a lot of the time before that is really your formative years, where you start to understand who your dad might be, and not having that bond, that closeness, only seeing that, oh, dad's here because this is an emergency. What was that like for you in terms of forming a relationship with your dad and going, okay, this is a dad? What was that like?
It's a tricky question to answer. I'm not sure quite how to answer that. I think I saw both my parents quite equally, between my dad and my mom, as parental figures, and I didn't treat them differently in terms of how their authority or what I looked towards them for, but it was just I had a much closer emotional bond with my mom, and with my dad it was, I kind of cherished the time we had together to do things, but he was definitely there more, I don't know, definitely when I was younger I was more scared of him, and he was the authoritarian parent. My mom was the loving parent I could run to if something was wrong. And so I think we never really developed a close emotional connection. And so my relationship with my dad really did shape how I deal with feelings and emotions, because I wanted, because I didn't have that close lovey-dovey connection with my dad. It was something that I wanted to build upon, and I think I wanted to push to become a much more empathetic or someone more in touch with my emotions than I felt my dad necessarily was.
Yeah, well, I think that's the end of that generation, is the mom who's there for all of the emotional bonding and support and teaching, and the dad is, dad goes out and works, and then dad is home, leave dad alone, he was working, right? But now that has so flipped that I find as dads, and I feel like this is, correct me if I'm wrong, something that you're wanting to move towards as a dad, is building that emotional bond like day one from the get-go, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's a little bit built upon, I think my dad wanted to. I have very progressive parents, considering they grew up in the 50s and 60s, and I think my dad wanted to do that, but because he had to be the breadwinner, he was out working 10, 12-hour days. He didn't have the opportunity to, and so maybe I feel like I'm trying to make up for lost time and do that for him. Yeah,
I found for myself, because I had a dad who was really just completely absent. It was goes to work and comes home, leave me alone. On the weekends, leave me alone. It's my time for me. So I never had that emotional bond with my dad too. And I'm going to ask you soon about concerns that you may have, but the concern that I had going into it was, am I going to work so hard to not repeat that? And I found that when I worked so hard to not repeat it, I wasn't actually creating anything in its place. I was just trying not to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah. So food for thought.
Absolutely.
What do you feel like you learned from your dad?
I think I learned how valuable time is, and just having dedicated time with your child. Because my mom was always there, I took that for granted. And then the special moments with my dad really stand out, because the things that we did as a kid, like, we didn't have a lot of time together, but he found a video game that he was particularly passionate about. I don't know if you're familiar with the video game Myst from the early mid-90s.
No.
It was a puzzle game from the mid-90s, and it really resonated with him.
Okay.
And he decided him and I would play it together. And
Okay.
I was 8 years old. I didn't know what I was doing, but that was,
Right.
he only played it with me.
Okay.
And those memories stand out so much. And so what I'm taking away is just how special that time is and being present. Even, I do foresee myself having to be working long hours and working really hard to provide for my partner and for our child, but making sure there is that dedicated time where it's just me and my daughter,
Right.
and we're doing something where I'm entirely focused on her. That's a big takeaway for me, because I know she'll remember those moments.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Every one of them is going to be that for her. And now, of course, your dad knows that you're going to be a dad soon.
Yep.
What did he say when you told him?
He was thrilled.
Right.
It's the joy of having loving parents.
Right.
They're happy when I'm happy. So
Yeah, that's good.
I'm the youngest child. I have 2 older brothers. Both of them have 1 child each, and so when I'm sure it was in the back of their mind when I did get divorced in the past. What does that mean for my future? Will I be able to have the family that I've always wanted? So I think once they heard we're expecting a girl, they were over the moon for me.
That's great. That's the kind of reaction we want, right?
Absolutely.
So, what concerns or fears do you have about the future of becoming a dad?
It's people always ask me, like, are you excited? Are you nervous? And I'm overall mostly excited, because I feel like, and you can correct me where I'm wrong here, but I feel like once the baby's born, the early phases are fairly straightforward. Your job's pretty clear cut. Change the diaper, feed the baby, take care of them when they're crying, and so I'm very excited for when my baby's going to arrive in the first year or two. What I'm very nervous about is when I need to start taking decisions for this human life, and start making decisions of what's the daycare, what's school, what activities and extracurriculars am I going to enroll my child in. Some of those early decisions I feel like can have long-lasting impacts, and I'm worried about being too proactive, not proactive enough. I'm worried about making the wrong decision. I'm worried about not making a decision at all when I need to make a decision. So I'm not scared about those first few years, but when this child needs to, I need to start shaping their life and making decisions that will shape their life, I'm very nervous about that.
Okay, well, that's normal. I mean, it's because you care, right?
Absolutely.
I did a podcast where I had a father and son, and the father's advice was always come from a place of love. So I think if you have that foundation, then decisions that you're gonna make or that you don't make are gonna come from that place of love. And we're gonna screw up. I can't tell you how many things I feel I've messed up along this route, and God knows how many more I'm gonna screw up. But always to come from a place of love. So I don't know if that's helpful.
I know it'll come from a place of love.
Yeah.
But I also know I'm gonna be looking back in 20 years and be like, damn. I wish I had made this decision.
Right. Well, you're gonna mess them up, but you know what?
Yep.
So is the world, right? So if you show them how to deal with those things, then they'll be okay. And they're also gonna have their own personality. Even though it's beginning first few years where you're going, okay, it's just changing the diapers and feeding, and you're crying. Okay, why are you crying? Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you feeling sick? Whatever. You're making decisions every time. So, I think being concerned or worried is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, one thing I'm irrationally paranoid about is having a child that comes into the world with some disability or some form of inherited from birth health issue. All the signs have pointed that we have a healthy baby on the way and everything's looking good, but I know there's always a risk. There's things we can't anticipate, and the thought of bringing a life into this world that comes in with a built-in challenge and has to play life on hard mode terrifies me that I would have caused that. That's something I'm very worried about. And
You think that would be your fault somehow?
I don't know that it'd necessarily be my... No, yeah, actually, yes. I feel like that's my worry. I would feel very guilty that I was the one who made this decision and caused this person to have undue pain or challenges coming through the world.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure how that would be something that would be your fault.
I know that's why I say it's a big irrational fear.
Right.
It's something that's sitting there on the back of my head and worrying me every once in a while. Growing up, my oldest uncle, he had I shouldn't say fairly severe autism. He did have autism. He essentially had the mentality of a 13-year-old and grew up through also the 50s and the 60s where there wasn't that great support.
Oh, no.
And seeing that and something like autism, it's still not well understood what the cause is, and so there's always a fear, is that genetic? And I think that has played a large part into that fear in my mind. Thinking, am I genetically predisposing my child to a life such as that, where they may have to suffer and struggle unnecessarily?
So how do you deal with that paranoid, rational feeling and the other concerns? What do you do when that pops into your head?
I do try and think that it's an unlikely event, and having opportunities, having life, it's better than no life at all. And then that's what I tell myself. And should this have to happen to someone, hopefully it means they're coming into the world with two very loving parents who are going to dote on this child regardless of what may come. Right. And try and make myself think, might inflate the ego a little bit, but think that they'll at least have two very loving parents and two people that care about them, and they'll be in the best position possible to deal with those challenges.
Right, and a dad who's basically been there and seen that. So, you're not walking into it having to read 10,000 books on, what do I do in this kind of situation. So it sounds like you're going to be a little more equipped, and so will your daughter.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, that's just what I'm thinking. Okay, let's turn the table into something a little more positive here.
Sure.
What are your greatest hopes for your daughter?
I really hope she finds something that is a passion for her that we can enable her to succeed in. It feels bad talking negatively about my parents, who are fantastic people, but when you're saying, what did you learn? What might you do differently? One thing my parents didn't, they were great at making sure we had every opportunity available to us and enrolling us in sports, extracurriculars, swimming, soccer, but they never pushed us to make sure we trained hard or practiced hard. They definitely had the mentality of, if it's something you're passionate about, you'll develop it. And I think I have a bit of a mentality of, a child needs a little bit more of a push to, they're going to complain about practicing an instrument or practicing whatever sport you enroll them in. I really hope my child finds something they're truly passionate about, because I feel like I've been very lucky through life, and I've kind of just stumbled through with going with the flow, and I've been very lucky to succeed through that. But it took me a long time to find things that were passions and hobbies that I wanted to really pursue and dedicate time towards. Okay. So I really hope my daughter early on find something, be it a sport, be it a hobby, whatever it is, I don't care, but something she's passionate about that I can help foster her and encourage and push her along on and help her truly succeed in.
It's trickier and trickier these days. I think a lot of parents have a that kind of a hands-off approach. It's either completely hands-off and, let's not push and let's just let them be. And then, we see them when they're in their 20s and we go, what have they, why have they not, what the hell, and then they go, if only I would have pushed, but then if you push too much, they push back and they go, I hate this and you're terrible. And, so it's a funny line that parents are now going through.
And that's where I saw my parents struggle is when I was growing up, especially in early years in school, it was interesting. Our report cards always had, how are they doing academically? And how much effort do we see them putting in? I can't remember exactly how those were divided. And
okay.
I do have a memory of my mom saying, I don't care how you're doing academically, but as long as I see you are getting excellent score in terms of how much you're putting into it, that's what matters to me.
Okay.
And it's that I want to kind of grow on and build upon to just give a little bit more push to try and identify, okay, what is my daughter leaning towards and where can I push a little bit more so she is able to find her passion and I can help push her the right way. And when she's maybe complaining about, I don't want to practice that, I can say, no, you need to, and let's push on that.
Right. Okay, that's fair. So what do you think your greatest strengths are going to be as a dad?
That was the question I saw you sent me that I was going to have the hardest time with.
Okay, let's hear it then.
I have zero idea.
See, I knew you were going to say that. Every man says that when he's going to become a dad. I don't think I have much to contribute. This is what I always hear.
I think where I hate answering questions like this because I feel like it sounds very egotistical.
No.
But I think where I do stand out a little bit is in terms of being empathetic. I do feel like I will be able to relate to my child, be able to sit down and really listen to them and understand the challenges they're going through and help them navigate emotionally what they need to deal with. I think one of my strengths too is that I grew up in a very progressive family and I'll be able to pass on those ideas, beliefs, and thoughts that we live in a very diverse world. You should love everyone, try and understand everyone, embrace all cultures, and have an open mind. So I think my strength will be emotionally setting up my child for the right, or for the world in the right way. And that's what I think I'll be able to pass on to the next generation and what I really hope to pass on to the next generation.
Well, that all sounds great, but now you've given some good strengths, so I'm going to ask you, what are you worried that she'll pick up from you?
My indecisiveness.
Okay.
Like I said, I feel like I've been very lucky in life to be able to go with the flow and succeed, but I've not had I've never felt like I had a clear direction, and when I interact with the world around me, I interact with a lot of people who feel like they have very clear directions forward, clear things they want to do next, clear passions. You have a podcast that you're very passionate about, and this is what you want to work on, and this is a project you're passionate about. I don't have those in my life. I am very, let's see there on the day what I can work on and build upon, but there's no real clear path forward. And so I think that's where I'm really worried about is it's not like I have a grandiose plan for my child. I don't have a clear plan of how I'm going to raise my daughter. I am going to have to figure it out as I go along. And I worry about where that's going to fall short and cause problems.
But you'll figure it out.
That's the plan.
I hope so. That's a reasonable plan. Did you care about whether you were going to have a boy or a girl?
It's funny because I would have always said no. All I cared about was having a healthy child.
Okay.
And it wasn't until, and my partner is the same. She said she doesn't care if we have a girl or a boy. And it wasn't until one day we were killing time before a doctor's appointment and wandering through Toys R Us. And we were wandering through the toys, and we looked at the boys' toys, and we were wandering through all the Barbie dolls and everything for the girls, and we're like, boys' toys are so much more fun.
They still are.
So, you know what? As long as my child loves Nerf guns and Lego and cares about the right toy, I couldn't care about what their gender is, how they identify.
Right.
But it might hurt me a little bit to play with Barbie dolls and whatnot, just because I think the toys targeted to boys are a lot more fun.
Okay. So in your mind, it's like, even though there are sections, it's just hey, have fun with the toy.
Pretty much. Honestly, right. it doesn't matter to me much, like boy, girl. As long as I have a happy, healthy child, that is truly what matters to me the most.
Okay.
But I think there's definitely things targeted towards the boys that I would get more of a joy in, but that either gender can show interest in those things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I've asked you all of these questions, and I said that they were going to be soul wrenching, but I don't think I did very much wrenching. I don't even think I didn't do very much soul even picking. So as an expectant dad, and I don't give advice, because I think when somebody gives advice, it's their way of trying to correct the mistakes they've made through your actions. So instead, if you have things that are in your mind that you would want to pose to a dad who's not going to give you advice, anything that came up in your mind that you'd want to ask or talk about?
I mean, things that have been on my mind are like, I'm really wondering, like, when you read books and you learn about raising children, it's how do you know they're ready for something? And it's all the way from, like, how do you know a child's ready to, I don't know, potty train, start eating solid foods? How do you know when they're ready to, or when you need to make a decision about things like school and whatnot? So I'm wondering, how has that come up in your life? How has that come up in your mind to say, I need to make a decision here, and I really need to reflect and think and make sure I'm making the right decision? How has that come about to you?
I've made the mistake of spontaneously making a choice, and then the relief out of there, or the help out of there, is that if I've made a bad decision, I haven't killed them. I haven't ruined their life, right? So my son is still fine. But what I can do is, if I make a poor decision, I can come back to him later and go, you know what? I messed up. I'm human. We're not going to do this. We're going to do that. This is the thing that's going to happen now, you know?
Is there any examples you'd be comfortable sharing with me about decisions you wish you had made differently?
Decisions I wish I had made differently. It's not separate moments, it's more a general thing. I feel like if I had pushed a little harder with some things, then and things wouldn't be what they are. You know, I took a lot of a back seat when I was married, and I had my wife, who's at the time was very comfortable in pushing and driving and creating things the way that she thinks they should be. So I wound up taking a back seat to that and just became supportive in all of that, which is a hard thing to shake. So I'm guessing that you and your partner are on a level playing field, and you're both doing that, which is what you want. You want to be making decisions together, right?
Absolutely,
yeah. So it's more now looking and going, well, the past is the past. It's happened. So now the best thing I can do is stop and take a breath and go, I'm feeling something, and I don't want to make a decision based on me feeling something. I want to sit down and take a breath and go, okay, what are my values? What do I believe? And what's going to be the best thing So making a choice, again, when I'm not under pressure, I do that. But there are moments where you got to make a choice right now. But if it's always because you care, you have a better chance of making a decision that's going to be a better one. I'm afraid I don't have a this happened and so I did that. But yeah, I've made rash decisions, but they happen. You just try to do better.
Kind of leads into a question I'd love to ask, and it speaks to kind of an existential fear in the back of my mind.
Oh, I love existential fears, especially in the back of the mind.
Has there been a moment ever through being a dad where you had a moment and thought, I need to change who I am? This speaks to something where I'm not happy with who I am as a person, and I need to change who I am to be a better dad.
Okay. Yes, and I want to ask you where that comes from, where that question comes from. Because I feel like that's something you're thinking. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's why I say it's a fear of mine. As I said a couple of times, I feel like I'm a very go with the flow person, and that's worked for me. But having a human life for counting on me and responsible for me, I feel like that's no longer good enough. I am going to be accountable. Like, this person's accountable. I'm accountable to this person. I'm going to need to take care of them. And so I've been able to dodge that question to myself.
Sure.
Because, it's just me who I need to take care of. And my partner, she's an adult. She can take care of herself. I love and support her, but she's able to deal with situations. But when it comes to a child, me and Helena are going to be the persons who need to take care of her.
Right.
And so I'm worried about my approach to life may no longer work.
So that's an important question. And a couple of years I came to really say, yeah, I need to make those changes, because when you're really hard on yourself, which is something that's in my wheelhouse, is being hard on myself. And I spent most of my life being really hard on myself, and always saying, well, that's just me and that's who I am, and so on. But a couple of years ago, it really hit home that won't do anymore. And if I'm going to be a better dad and be a better man, then yeah, I'm going to have to look at myself and make some changes, make changes in the way that I see myself, so that I see myself well and I'm healthy, and so that my son sees that too, and gains the resources and the tools to go, okay, it's important to see things in a healthier way too, and learn that from me as well. So I think the idea is that we need to recognize those things that you said were egotistical,
Yeah.
and go, they're not egotistical. These are true facts about me. This is who I am. That's good. And then allow that to be, you all the time in a very confident, clear way. And the more you do that, the closer you'll be to going, okay, I am who I am for my daughter, and who I am for me.
And if I'm truly honest where the question comes from,
yeah. I believe it.
No, I want to explain where it really comes from.
Go.
For years, I've struggled with alcoholism, and it was the decision to start a family where I really realized, like, in order to do this, I need to conquer that challenge and change who I am. Over the years, I had been able to stop drinking for months at a time, and make sure I was maintaining my life, still being successful for me, being as supportive as I needed to be for my partner, but still going back and forth between drinking and not fully dealing with the problem. But I realized if I wanted to start a family, that is a problem I really needed to deal with fully. And so it's been a big change for me to completely stop drinking. We made the decision then to conceive, and it's been something I've continued to deal with and something I've tried to stay on top of. But the alcoholism was there to mask a lot of problems. And so I'm also thinking about all the things that were being pushed to the side that I was leveraging alcohol to deal with, that I need to get on top of and still grow to be a better person and actually deal with those challenges that I was medicating.
So how's that going?
It's been a real struggle.
I can only imagine.
And this is how we came to know each other. I was at UNI training. Travis decided to start a program called 3 Months Off, and the goal there was people who needed to take a break from something in their life and focus on and use training, meditation, a meal plan to help kickstart them in the right direction, was a real big boost for pushing me in the right direction. I felt fantastic, but now I'm at the phase of I'm really seriously being able to focus in on work. And where I've been using alcohol to suppress all the stresses from work and help dull what that brought into my life. Now those are all front and center, and I'm working very long hours. I'm very stressed because of work, and I'm concerned about how that's going to play into my role as being a father.
Well, it's a day by day thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. With the extra stress of being a parent, I won't pretend to know what that weight is, but I think day by day, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really the approach, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I would just ask the question of like what you faced that made you feel like, okay, I need to be a better person and really change who I am, because that's where I feel like I am right now. And I realize, okay, at this point I have 2 months left to change and really shape myself before I have this life there and I'm responsible for.
Yeah. But you have more than 2 months, right? Because you have 2 months, but then you have every day after that to choose. So, if it really is day by day, then it's not 2 months. I would say release that pressure and just do what you've been doing and go day by day. It's not changing who you are. It's capitalizing on those things that you are that you don't allow yourself to be and act upon that are good in your nature. Because you've said so many things that are good about who you are and what you want to be. I think it's just maybe going, okay, well, those things are true about me and those things feel good, right?
Yep.
So I think it's just remembering those things, maybe.
Just feels like I'm playing catch up a little bit.
Well, we all are. Since the pandemic, the mental health issues globally have just been on the rise. I think everybody in one way or another is just trying to catch up and deal with with everything that's come the last few years. But it's one thing at a time. It's one decision at a time. Not that I have the right answers for this or the right approach. It's just what I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else that's running around in your head?
Those have been the big things.
Okay. All right. Good. I want to thank you so much for being here and for giving all of that. I really appreciate it. So I just want to end off by thanking you once again, Roger, and thanking everybody for tuning in and listening. As always, I like to end a podcast with a challenge. So a little man-dad challenge is, what are you struggling with? What is the thing that you feel holds you back? Now stop and ask yourself, what is the fear behind that? And then take that fear, put it on one side, and on the other side go, what are all the good things that I have to overcome that fear? And then work on those. So that's it for me this episode, From Man to Dad.